7 o'clock. Yeah, I'll tell you more. We'll go through it. Where is everyone? Here we go.
Oh, break.
Rita's here.
You're from here. Show and tell.
Show and tell?
Show and
I
tell.
heard.
She's not gonna be here, we just need to cancel.
What, to whom?
That would be nice. No, she's down in OC and was with the sheriff and couldn't leave. Visit her.
Okay.
Okay. Even.
I don't know.
Sponsor.
7 o'clock, so we're gonna call the meeting to order.
Okay, thank you.
We don't have insurance, I have to drag you out there.
Oh, okay.
To get raccoons.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Hello?
I think you should do, they can.
I hear you.
If anyone wishes to speak, we have speaker cards that would help us identify who you are. Call you up.
down here because there's this route over there.
Okay,
Sorry,
everybody's,
yeah. I'm gonna time
okay, our secretary is not here, so, yeah.
I time them, but they don't listen.
I'll be happy to.
You're gonna, okay.
He's in the
Nice
listen
start.
for.
You're the
All right, I'm gonna call roll. Alex and Vicky is excused. Andrew Sussman.
Here.
Greg Redo is in Miami. Is it Eric Previn?
Here.
Heidi is not here.
She said she was gonna come, so.
Okay, John is not here. I didn't see hear anything from him. Keith is excused. He's working. Lisa Karajian.
Here.
Patrice. Patrick.
Mm-hmm.
Richard Welsh.
Yes.
Richard Niederberg.
Yeah.
Rita is working out of town.
Heidi's here.
Heidi's here.
Okay, that's Heidi.
Is the recording machine functioning?
I don't know if the camera ever got plugged in.
Peter,
I can table
can
quotes.
you see
I'm
if
not
that
sure, but there's
camera's
other
right?
people here for
It's
things that they
not?
wanna talk about, so we should probably get going. I
Yeah.
don't wanna waste these
We,
people's
you
time.
know,
when they're
if we can
going.
get the, I don't know if that ever got plugged in.
Plug it in.
Could somebody check the camera and see if it's got power and it's turned on, please?
It's certainly not plugged in, so I'd be amazed if.
All right, Mr. Schiller is here, Claire is not here, and
Do you have a comment card?
Yes.
all right.
Do you guys have comment?
10 people. Six to pass.
Do you have a speaking card?
We want to talk about saving a house in our neighborhood.
Is it on the agenda?
It is
I
on
don't-
the agenda for land use.
It is on the agenda? Okay, great, thank you,
Number 12, I think.
thank
Yeah.
you.
Did you fill out a card?
Do me a favor, just run over, grab a card.
Okay,
Number 11.
Yeah.
Hi, Heidi.
We just need one card?
No, one for everyone. Thank you.
All right,
Regret to inform you, I believe the camera's dead.
that's not
I
good.
don't think you got charged up for it. And it doesn't appear to have a regular power plug in. So unless he's got a laptop we connect it to.
We need to call back the cards. There's no sheets, there's only one sheet.
Comment cards?
It's too bad there isn't an AC because that can always be.
But I mean, a little bit.
You would think.
You can see that.
I can stop for comments.
Nothing every day. Maybe it's nothing.
We'll still call for comments.
I know.
I'll just,
generically call for
Yes.
I can call, I'll just write it down, whoever's talking about what. Okay? All right, we're going to, the approval of the November 15th board minutes. Did anybody bother to read the board minutes?
Yeah.
I think yes.
I'd like to adopt them as written.
All right, anybody have anything against, adopting the,
Yeah, no, I'm not
Minutes?
voting for the minutes because I didn't see them and they're not here. so I'm gonna have to abstain.
All right, and they were emailed to
Yeah, no, I
everybody,
know,
so.
but I didn't get a chance to look at it.
All right. All right, so we have one abstention. Ah, he's making it noisier. Good, show. Maybe somebody can hear me. All right, so we have one abstention. All right, everyone else is on board with the minutes, or anybody else having, okay, we will approve the minutes.
So I needed more hearing loss.
That was good.
You write a note for me for the VA on that?
No. All right, next, update by the president. We had an interesting problem that arose. It was brought to my attention that we have an individual who absents himself from meetings and doesn't tell anybody why, he just picks this. And unfortunately, that was not my purview. But the way our our bylaws are written, there was no ups, downs, arounds, and through. Now, this is something that we are supposed to now discuss. I have to agendize it, so we can't discuss it tonight because everything occurred yesterday. So we will be discussing that next month.
What will we be discussing?
The fact that Mr. Previn, because of his, he has the penchant for leaving our meetings, he just walks away. Everyone else who has the need to leave always tells someone. If somebody is going to be late, they tell someone. He did not avail himself
That's what I'm
of
looking
that.
at right now.
And as such, he was considered absent when he just walked away. I thank the people who brought this to my attention, and unfortunately, the reading of the bylaws is rather, the bylaws are stilted, so the president has all of his power, good, bad, or indifferent. I mean, I didn't write them, they're there. I also, someone who was in the past, part and parcel of the SCNC was asked, and they came to the same conclusion. So we will be discussing this further at next month's meeting.
What will we be discussing exactly?
There's public comment for president's
I
comments.
understand. We will be discussing whether or not Mr. Previn was absent and whether or not he is removed from the board.
Didn't Darren Martinez handle that today?
He said we have to discuss it. That's why we're
Next
going to
board
be
meeting.
discussing.
It has to be agenda.
And it has to be agendized, therefore we can't
Yes.
do anything about it till next month.
Isn't there a procedure where a board member can appeal your decision not to discuss something tonight if it's seconded by another board member?
So,
Why don't we let,
Let's Mr. Gibson do it.
so good evening, members of the board, Madam President, Mr. President, members of the board. My name is Gibson Yambura from the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. I definitely just wanted us to sort of have,
Can you just tell me what is your position there, so I know?
I am the field representative for Studio City Neighborhood Council.
Hi,
I've been in your meetings, the past two meetings in the back, so just kind
I
of.
haven't.
he's been out of town, he's been in.
Hi. Okay, fantastic. How was the holiday?
How you doing? Sure.
So just kind of want to highlight this matter that has been sort of discussed with the city attorney. I think one thing he did mention that he was not in town I think when the email was sent out to the city attorney. And in the email, he mentioned that nowhere in your bylaws give the authority to make a call as to whether it's absent. Your board needs to make a determination at a public meeting whether he was absent pursuant to the bylaws. Accordingly, you will need to agendize and have this matter discussed by the board. So in order for us to have a conversation, I think I'm gonna ask the board not to further this conversation because we're talking about an item that's not on the agenda. So even though it's been brought up by the president, I would like to highlight that we need to make sure it's agendized because any further discussions mean we could be in violation. So I prefer that, yes, you brought it into conversation with the board, but I prefer we make sure it's agendized in next month's agenda.
Can I ask you a question then,
Yes,
just
sir.
along those lines? If we want to get other things agendized, according to our bylaws, there seems to be some disagreement on how this actually happens, how we get something on the agenda that does, I mean, obviously, because this won't be coming out of a committee, right?
So in addition to also speaking to the bylaws, I think also it's very important that we talk about the operating procedure, operating procedure that is stated in, I did notice that you're actually having the table, that sort of has a clear indication as to how the agenda is set and sort of what items can be discussed and how the agenda is set. So if the bylaws don't discuss it, but they're definitely discussed in the operating procedure, so that's something that's definitely that we should put into highlight. But if you feel as though like something in the process is missing, I think it's important that we sort of adapt it and change it accordingly, and I can be of assistance on that. I do know in the operating procedure, I wish I had a copy with me. It does give, I'm gonna grab one.
Can someone grab them a copy of the operating procedures?
There's one over there in the box.
There are just so many people. This one. Did you want to just take that?
So when we go into the I'm gonna just take this out. So when we go off in your operating procedure on page 2, it definitely gives sort of a kind of a better clarification as to how to do it rather than the bylaws. So if it's sort of there is a current provision as to how to do it, then I'd recommend that we try to use that process for now.
Can you read it exactly so that we don't have any?
So in the operating procedure in Article 2, where it mentions board agenda, the president will place items on the agenda with a brief description of the item and any action if required. Any studio city neighborhood council stakeholder may request items be placed on the agenda in accordance with the term limits set below. If an item is not placed on the agenda for 2 consecutive meetings, the president shall introduce a motion for the board to determine whether the item will be placed on the following month's agenda. So it also goes into highlights option B. So we talk about the cutoff times for placing the agenda. I think one of the most important one is also item C is when the president has the discretion to refer the requested agenda item to the appropriate committee. So I definitely know that there was a concern in regards to certain motions. The response was provided was sufficient enough because based off of the operating procedure, by referring to provide to a specific committee, I think that is definitely a good answer and it's sufficient enough as to the request. So I think it's also important that we try to stick to the operating procedure before we get into any questions.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. President.
So if something's been brought up
Yeah.
at least twice, and
Yes.
it was not put on, it should be sent to a committee?
So the president has the discretion. So this gives, I think it's also important to see that once the president is requested to send it to the appropriate committee, and item C mentions thereafter the committee shall request the president agendize the referred item within the 45 days. So if the president has mentioned that, hey, you can send it to the bylaw, just make sure it goes to that specific committee and make sure it's agendized by the bylaw committee, and then it can be voted on.
Okay, so if we want to bring any kind of motion, and I don't mean this personally against Denise, but Denise does not want on the agenda, it just won't get on. So
The question is, I think when we stick to the operating procedure,
Yeah.
I think this gives I would say it gives a definition as to what the process is. So it is definitely important to recognize sort of how the agenda is set based off of the operating procedure.
Yeah.
So let's say you want to bring up an item, what's an item you want to talk about? Like, just give me anything.
Eric wants to save a cat.
Okay, so for example, any board member wants to save a cat rather than, and you've asked the president to place it on the agenda. So let's just go through the operating procedure, right? So you request it, and then if the president does not place the item in 2 consecutive meetings, then the president shall introduce a motion to determine whether the item will be placed in the following month's agenda. So it's clear that you can do it 2 ways. The president can either decide to, based off of this interpretation, the president can then send it to a bylaw or set it as a motion to be discussed after a request of 45 days. So I think that's what we should go upon rather than just a full department assessment, because clearly you have at least operating procedures that give an explanation as to how to do it. So rather than us going back and forth, I think it's important that we try to stick to as much the bylaws and operating procedure. Quick question, do members of the board know where they can obtain an online copy of their operation procedure?
On the webpage with everything else.
In addition to, does everybody know where to get their bylaws?
Same place.
Fantastic. So I think me asking that question is, it's important that we know that all board members know where they can access that, as well as members of the public. So if anybody has any questions as to how the Studio City Neighborhood Council functions, it's important that we know at least where they can access those public documents. And I want to commend the board for actually having these operating procedures and bylaws in the meeting. Any more questions?
I have one. So
Yes,
to
Ms.
move point, is this point, Eric is still on the board.
Thus far, it's not an agenda item that cannot be discussed. So thus far, as of my understanding, Ms. Previn is still a board member who can participate with every right possible.
And will not be replaced at this point.
Right now, in order to us to have a board removal process based off of the recommendation of the city attorney, it must be discussed with the board as to whether this was a reported issue. So it's important that if it's going to be put on the board, on the agenda, we need to make sure that the board is correctly discussing this matter with it being as a public item. Because the city attorney did ask us to, it did state in that email, right? So, yeah, nowhere that mentions the bylaws that does not give the president the full authority to make a call whether he was upset, right?
Actually, Gibson, I'm Eric Trevor.
Yes, I know you are, sir.
May I read the letter from the city attorney? Because I think that you're not reading the whole letter, which is just a short letter, so I think that would make it very clear.
So do you want me to read the whole thing?
I'll read the letter.
Sure,
Hello, Denise.
Microphone.
Yeah, it's from Darren Martinez, the city attorney.
And
it
please,
says,
please know what time it was sent today? It was sent January 17th at 1:24 p.m.
Yeah, 1:24 p.m. on January 17th. Hello, Denise. It is disingenuous to state that I knew about this removal when you sent me an email yesterday when I was out of the office, and have only now read your email proclaiming that you would remove Mr. Previn. It is impermissible for you to remove Eric on the grounds you've stated. Nowhere do your bylaws give you the authority to make a call on whether he was absent. Your board needs to make that determination at a public meeting whether he was absent pursuant to the bylaws. Accordingly, you will need to agendize and have this matter discussed by your board before any removal. In addition, if the board has any questions about the removal process, then agendize the questions that the board wants answered. We are not going to give advice to single individuals on how the removal process works, and instead everyone will be a recipient of the advice. Please let me know if you have any further questions. Darren Martinez, the managing deputy city attorney. And that is not my words, those are his words.
No, I did
Just to be
read
clear,
a part of
just to
it,
be
but
clear.
I get...
No, that's good,
Yeah.
just to be clear.
Yeah, just definitely to be clear, that's the wording of the city attorney. And based off of that, I think it's important that we start from there. And rather than discuss this matter, if it's not agendized, I prefer that we make sure, if it's feasible, make sure it's agendized.
Yeah, I think, Eric, the point that he was trying to make, I'm just saying, was that the part where it says, in addition, if this board has any questions about the removal process, then agendize the questions that the board wants answered also. And I think a lot of people on the board have questions about it, so will those should all be on the agenda for next month.
Yeah.
Or specifically, what should be the process of having those questions agendized? So that we make sure that we're answering those questions and that they're agendized in the proper fashion.
So I think this is an ongoing conversation. I think to get a full clarification, it's important that we get the city attorney involved through this whole process, and I think that is what I'd recommend, like first thing in the morning, we get full clarification based off of bylaws, based off the interpretation of the city attorney, as to what is the proper writing as to it.
Okay. Again, basically, what you're saying is true, but there was an incorrectness in Mr. Martinez's written, because he is not the city attorney. We're represented by the entire office. If one person's not there, somebody else does it. We're represented by the office of city attorney. So even if he's not there, it doesn't make a difference. Somebody has a responsibility to do it. Maybe he was given it too late. Who knows why? But he's not personally our attorney. The office is our attorney. Thank you.
He may not be the only attorney for you, but he's also representative of all neighborhood councils, so all based off of what.
So one person's representing 96 councils, that's...
No, but that's rather than us getting into public conversation.
Can I
I think
just
it's.
shout out whenever I feel like
No, we
No,
can't.
no,
No,
we cannot
only
do
one
that.
person.
It's not an agendized item, so I think it is important that we continue getting continuous conversation with the city attorney to make sure that when it's agendized in next month's meeting, it is correctly done so. So let's just start from there rather than us getting into this back and forth. Yes,
One question maybe should be maybe a segue into one of the things that should be agendized is that as a board, do we even vote on removal or not, or are we voting on whether there's an absence or not? And isn't that something is it that nebulous that you can vote on whether someone's absent or not?
so that's, what do the bylaws state? I always start with that conversation. What do the bylaws for the Studio City Neighborhood Council state?
They say nothing about if you leave early or get there late. They say nothing about that. It's just whether you're absent from a meeting or not.
So there's
It's
no
not
definition.
specific. There's no definition in your bylaws.
So we have, if the bylaws sort of do not provide the sufficient information for that, then it becomes upon the board, is it necessary to set up maybe a recommendation where we can do bylaw amendments? Because it's still open right now to make sure that it's actually wording for it, rather than going on something that is not within the bylaws.
The section 7 says a board member shall be automatically removed from the board upon 2 unexcused absences from regularly scheduled board meetings or upon 2 unexcused absences from regularly scheduled meetings of which the board member is a member. An unexcused absence will occur when a member cannot provide the president or committee chairperson a reasonable explanation for the absence.
So rather than us getting back and forth, I think one thing is also very important. The bylaws, just to be clear, does not have a clear process as to what is considered, right? I mean, the wording that's missing within the bylaws means that the neighborhood council sees that there's a problem, maybe wording that's missing in the bylaws. And that's what I'll keep going back to, is that maybe something as a recommendation that can be discussed by the bylaws committee to make sure it can be added to your current bylaws, right? So it could be, if you're able to sort of take a look at a future perspective, I mean, if you take a look at it on a different view of things, there's some wording missing. Clearly the bylaws don't have a good definition, so is that something that's missing that needs to be added, and can it be something sufficient to have an actual conversation as the board, rather than us going into this conversation is a current board member in violation of that, if there's no rules that provide a black and white explanation. So my recommendation is like, well, let's leave it at that, and then maybe seek clarification, maybe have a further discussion about it.
Do you have a
Thank
card?
Thank you.
I do have a card, Mr. Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have public comment on this item.
I think we'll get to that, right?
Yeah, we have public comments coming up.
Yes.
On president's comments.
I think that's just part
I
of
think
it.
at some point we need to stop.
Yeah,
And that's sometimes now.
yeah,
Yeah, it's got to be.
Yeah.
It's got to be.
that's like, yeah.
Right now.
Thanks, Gibson.
Thank you very much.
I don't care as many as possible.
More
Okay.
pockets.
Thank you.
I have
for-
those.
Thank you for your clarification.
Thank you.
No, thank you, Madam President. Thank you, members of the board. Let's hope we have a good meeting today, right?
Okay, you have another one?
Every meeting's a good meeting.
Okay, we're now going to move to public comments. I have,
You have three legs.
I have John Barton.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Good evening, how are you? Thank you for your service, by the way. I don't know any of you personally, but are you all aware or have any input on Recycle LA?
I've read some pamphlets on it.
I don't know anybody who has any input on that. Technically, we don't have any input, but we take the comments from stakeholders. You've got a representative from Mr. Kirkorian's office.
Right.
So, say your piece.
We were told that as of the first of the year that we were going to be changing to Recycle LA. I live in a condominium complex, and that we would be not forced, but asked to do what they wanted us to do as far as recycling, trash, and other issues. So we have 3 dumpsters. There seems to be an issue with them being able to get into our building. Their codes don't seem to work for just the recycling. As far as the refuse, they get in for that. I have pictures of our dumpster. It hasn't been dumped in 3 weeks for the recycle bin. And I'm just wondering, they doubled our service fee. It used to be $500 a month. Now it's $1,100 and something. And if they can't get in, it's a $25 or $40 charge each time they can't get in. And I'm just wondering what kind of recourse we have on this. We want to follow the rules, but they're not holding their end of the bargain as far as doing service with us in the building. I just wanted to bring it to the
You're
attention.
lucky Jessica's the one to
Yeah.
talk to about.
And you're also
Jessica,
looking
raise your
at,
hand.
quite a few other people have been tripled and quadrupled.
I know, I've read the articles,
Yeah,
I haven't been to a meeting, so I thought I'd bring it to, I'm sure it's a touchy issue, and
yeah.
Yeah, no, but honestly, Jessica, right back there,
Right
your hand
there.
raised, she'd be the perfect person to talk to about this. Yeah,
great.
yeah.
We should look.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for your service.
Came to the right meeting.
Freddie,
That's right.
Good evening. My name is Freddie Coupenames. I'm from North Hollywood West Neighborhood Council. I'm also one of the Region 4 Budget Advocates coming to visit, as well as part of the Planning Committee for the Congress of Neighborhoods, if you've heard of the event. So I'm speaking on two hats. So first, Budget Advocates. As you know, Saturday, January 20th, from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. is Regional Budget Day. It will be for Regions 1 through 4 at the Marvin Broad Building at 626 Van Nuys in 91401. We're going to be learning about the budget process. There's a whole agenda that we can go through that we're going to have, you're going to learn more about who the budget advocates are. Now, if you don't know who budget advocates are, we go through the finances for the city of LA. We write a white paper making a recommendation after we've talked to stakeholders to the mayor and to the city council. And actually, Krikorian is actually the chair for the Budget and Finance Committee. So definitely Krikorian is a good person to talk to. We make a white paper, a recommendation on based of what you want to get done and how do you want the funds to be allocated for city services. And so we go over the numbers. Now, as for the next hat, the Congress of Neighborhoods. I'm here because it's a save the date for Saturday, September 22nd, which is the next Congress of Neighborhoods. So I highly recommend if you have not been. It unifies all 97 neighborhood councils in City Hall, where they have workshops to help educate or pass on information. It's a good networking event and also education point. I'm also here to give those early registrants, and I have their names right here, their pins, for those that have registered from last year. I have extras, which we normally save for the president, vice president, and treasurer, and secretary, but the secretary's not here. So I'll be giving those out, and that's it. Whew.
Will you repeat the date?
Oh, September 22nd.
I got you.
Oh, so it's way.
In the advance. No, I'm doing like
This
a
is-
way save the
this
date
is-
because we're going to be
yeah,
coming back to neighborhood councils asking for funds.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you for your work with the needs. Thank you.
Thank you.
and then I'll, to give to Eric when you see him.
He's right there. Yeah, he's right there.
Okay.
Treasurer.
Everyone's right there.
Awesome, perfect, thank you. And is Heidi?
Right there.
I can't believe I didn't see that. And Keith?
He's not
Keith
here.
is not here.
Right here.
I can bring it to him.
Okay.
He knows it.
Yeah.
Lisa Pond Davis and Victoria Shawn.
They're not here. No, Victoria's over there.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thanks, Freddie.
We have Gary Johnson.
No, nor do I.
Wait,
I was just gonna, I don't have anything really to say except regarding the condo trash pickup. There was a big article in the LA Times. I don't know if you saw it, but I thought it was very comprehensive, so.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's all.
That's it. All right. Then we have Richard Adams.
And I have public comment on number 3 as well.
turned in one card for
I
everything.
understand. Let's just do public comments, please.
Alrighty, first off, if y'all like the food, it's from a new restaurant. I'm gonna butcher this because I don't know how to do Chinese. Chengdu House. They're on the northwest corner of what should and Riverside, right next to the liquor store. Good place, good food, didn't give me any problems. Talked last summer briefly about them repaving Little Ventura and the other streets in my neighborhood, and commented that parts of the paving machine were pounded in the asphalt as part of the process. You'll be happy to hear that my street is cracking north to south across the width of the road, same place it was cracking 10 years ago when we moved in. So the new paving job is already failing. Lastly, you know, I've been involved in this neighbor council longer than just about anybody except Richard and Rita, who's not with us tonight. I come by my low expectations of humanity after having dealt with them for many decades. And even my low expectations aren't always met. On rare occasions, there are certain people who do exceed and excel above and beyond my expectations.
Pause the time and everything, hold on. Hey, can we, I'm sorry. Victoria, can we just keep it down a little bit back
Take it
there?
up the hallway.
Sorry.
I can talk a little louder.
Hallways.
Let's not over each other.
Anyway.
Okay, back to you.
Did you hear me rambling on about expectations and some people actually exceeding and, you know, really being awesome? Yeah, okay, well, Rob Schiller, could you please stand up? That wasn't a suggestion.
Rob Schiller, stand up.
Am I gonna get a free pen?
Yes, a free pen.
Where was I on this? Oh, yeah, I wrote some other notes.
Lowering expectations, and I just said for me to rise.
Therefore, on behalf of Local 5149 of the IFPWGSD, I hereby award you this award.
What is the IFPWGSD?
Oh, that would be the International Federation of People What Get Shit Done.
Oh, very cool. I'm glad it went to good use.
I souvenired it after the event. Now read the plaque at the bottom. Oh, okay.
To Rob Schiller with thanks, your vision is why it was a success.
Thank you very much.
Good work, good work.
I imagined that framed when I designed that. I imagined it framed and presented to you at this particular.
Officer Shawn here, but he's on vacation. So he will be with us next month. But Jessica is here. And Jessica is a public speaker.
Here, have one of mine.
Hey, Schiller.
Water?
Hey, Jessica. Hello. Hi.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back from the holidays. Is this on? Yes, it is. Okay.
You can hear us breathing.
So I'll briefly go over my standard list of items. I don't have really much to bring up because it's, well, a new year and session was on leave because of the holiday. So the first thing I want to talk about is homelessness. Tomorrow is our huge town hall event that's going to be taking place at LA Valley College, which I have flyers for, which I will leave in the back. I didn't check, but as of last week, we had 300 people RSVP. It's going to be pretty big. So there's a homelessness czar for the city of Los Angeles who will be speaking. We'll have several people on the panel from the county and the state and the city, and then there will also be basically every single entity that deals with homelessness will be at this event, including Captain Torres, who's amazing. He is in charge of all the City of LA parks. He handles a lot of, basically his job is to become homeless encampment cleanup. He does it a lot at the river, especially the one that we did the cleanup for, Laurel Canyon to Whitsett. He will be in attendance there. So if anyone, I encourage all of you to attend, especially on the board, and anyone who is in particular very passionate about this. Craig, who I don't think is here, Patrice, and I think, is Peter Cole here? Yes, he is. I will be there as well as the whole entire staff as well. And anyone I see, I'm going to introduce you to people I think you should know. I wish to be called people would do this, but that's why we're in the field, so we're really good at people. So if I see you, I'm going to connect you with a person I think you should know, because a lot of people are going to be there. I also wanted to point out the homeless count that we do every year is going to be taking place next week, Tuesday, January 23rd, at 8 p.m., so it's a night thing. We don't require people to like physically go up and talk to people. That makes people uncomfortable. So if you drive around and you count out people, that's basically what they require. If you are interested, you can register at www.theycountwillyou.org. And then there's a sheet, the thing that comes up that you put in your name and information. But if you want to go and you don't feel like registering, you can just go through me and I'd be happy to take you along. Let's see. I also want to point out that, as a reminder, Patrice, I have not forgotten about the meeting that we had at our office. So this is on my agenda to do for 2018, where I want to work with the comms department to come up with a map of all the LA River and Studio City, of all the entities involved, so that we can, I would like to have an interactive map, honestly, on our website. So that's my super dream. But in the interim, something more simple so I can pass out to people who are interested in that kind of thing. So I haven't forgot about that. It's just everybody's been really focused on the homeless town hall. So as soon as this is done, then I'm gonna work on this with them. Let's see, what else? Earlier today, I sent out an email to Denise and Patrick. Unfortunately, as I'm sure all of you are aware, at times the city is reactive instead of proactive. I do my best to be proactive, but there's a lot of people above me. I'm sure you all heard about the fires that occurred by the Skirball Center. The cause of that fire. Highly unfortunate. So after that, the mayor decided to create an initiative as of January 5th for something that he is terming, the title of it is honest to God horrible. It is so long. It's just the very high fire hazard severity zone. And so they're going to work with different entities to determine which areas are high fire and then which areas have the most homeless encampments, and then have a system to report it to the right people. What should have been done. Well, we won't go there. So that is now in the process. I had a meeting in Laurelwood HOA about a week, maybe a week and a half ago. At that meeting, I had met some individuals who live in the area that is more prone to fire, so I requested everyone to send me locations so that I can send them to LFD and they can put this on this location. There tend not to be, there's very few in Fryman. There was some in Fryman because it was closed. So they tend to be, there's a difference between usually homeless and some people who are considered transients, and that some people want to be housed and there's people who don't want to be housed. The people who don't want to be housed don't tend to be around people. They don't want to be around people. So the second more people show up, they tend to move on, which is why they're usually at the river. Next up is the Studio City NTM study. So when the last meeting in November, I mentioned that we had the funding secured, and it was released as of January 1st from the mayor's office to DOT. So they're going to be in the process of hiring a consultant. Now initially I was told by DOT, very high up in DOT, that the consultant would be hired, but apparently they have a process where they have to put out a bid for 90 days, and then all the consultants then apply for that bid. So in 90 days we'll have a name of the consultant. Very odd. And also want to advertise that we're having a hike with a council member, which I'm excited about, which is on Saturday, January 27th at 9 o'clock in the morning. This is at Fryman Canyon, which is Williker Park, which is MRC property. So they will be there along with the council member and myself and a few other staffers. So if you guys love to hike, I think it's a great time to do that. Yes, it'll reopen January 5th. They made pretty much all the improvements except for some signage they want to add. The bathrooms are really nice. They lock at night. Excuse me, after dark. Before dark. They put up security cameras. That's something we've been working with the neighborhood prosecutor, Todd Gilman, on. They're not going to be active until the end of the month. Certain areas where people were consistently traveling through to make their own path that they felt was dangerous, they've closed off a couple sections by putting some trees and stuff. They've removed quite a bit of dead trees as well and planted some new ones. I myself went up the trail because I have to practice for when I go with the council member. I had something else to update, but he's not here, which is Alex's 50, so I'll just email him. And if there's any questions before, I don't know if she's here, but I wanted to introduce someone. Yes, Barry?
What was the thing you said a consultant was being sought?
So apparently, according to Brian Gallagher, we were told initially that they would hire a consultant. We weren't told the process. They were going to hire a consultant, and then we'll meet with you, and then we'll go from there. So apparently, they have, the city DOT department has what they have a bidding process. They have to bid it to consultants for 90 days.
But
And
what
once
are we
that's,
trying to find, this consultant find out for us?
so the consultant will be in charge of the entire neighborhood traffic management study for the entire city of
So-
City.
Okay, because we were promised last spring from your office that this would happen, but it was going to be in conjunction with the two other council members from Cahuenga Pass to Havenhurst.
This is a separate funding amount that the council member got. It's separate from that. I mean, I would,
So
it's
this
not
would
gonna be a
just,
problem for me to be able to maybe include someone in CD4 because I used to work there. And because of that, I was told by Brian that we want to be careful not to expand the boundaries too much. I mean, I already gave him a map of all the areas that are of concern.
so this is like for all of Studio
All of
City.
Studio
The,
City.
the problem I'm just getting at
Yes.
is the Sherman Oaks, little wedge that they've done.
Yes.
Unless you address the entire area where you can drive over the mountains,
Yeah.
you can't just address one section, because then if you put some, restrictions there, it
It
moves
just
out
moves the
to
problem.
the other side, so
100%.
that's why, and Councilman Rue even agreed with me at one of his forums, that you have to look at this globally, not just one little section.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you on that. In that case with Rue's office, they did not have separate funding for that. That was a favor that Brian Gallagher gave them, but, which is why we wanted to do something more expansive based on that situation that occurred. So it's quite a bit of funding they're getting to be able to hire this consultant to do this.
I won't complain, we need.
Here, and this is why, this is,
There's one more thing. I did want to update you on one of your cases. There was, Chiquita and Colfax, there's those candlesticks. We requested it back in, I believe, August, you and two other constituents, and I finally got the response that they put them in order in November.
Okay. I will say, in covering the Sylmar Fires, I saw a number of those in the middle of the street.
this is going on,
exactly like-
we don't have public comment on this, and if so, we're way over 2 minutes.
I signed up for this item, actually.
All right, well, it's been 2 minutes, thank you.
That is it. Does anybody have any questions?
I have public comment.
Okay.
And this is just riffing on what you're talking about with the fire.
Sure.
Over the holidays, because the 4 or 5 hour freeway was actually moving, I had to go over to the VA for health care. So I took the freeway. You can see right where the fire started. And Caltrans does not clear their brush like all citizens are supposed to clear their brush. That's one of the problems you have. The other problem you have is a whole east side of the pass, if you're headed south, you can look, and whoever landscaped it might as well just put gasoline barrels every few yards, because it's nothing but pine and cypress and eucalyptus, and everybody has a wood fence and a wood deck overhanging. But where the fire started, if Caltrans had to clean up their loose brush like everybody else does, it probably wouldn't have been quite as bad, although when the winds were blowing that night, it probably would, you would set almost anything on fire. But somebody needs to, this is a letter I need to send to you folks and AD 46 and see if Caltrans can be made to behave like the rest of the citizens are.
Yeah, that's something we're going to talk about. We were initially supposed to meet with their government affairs relations person, and he had to cancel. So that meeting, I think, is coming up in the next couple of weeks with him. And he's the one that I always report the homeless encampments to. I hope that they are working on something like the city just enacted, because when we report things to, because it's not really our entity, it's not a city entity. So I usually go through the state to do it because it's their job. But then I follow up with them as well because I have to make sure everybody gets stuff done. So when they do encampments, they just go in a circle, literally. And so if they fix this house at X, and then they leave and they leave the next day and it comes back, they don't go back. They just continue on a circle. That's how they work. I want to introduce, I don't know if she's here or not, Tanaz Golshan.
She's not here yet. She
Okay.
had a previous meeting. She won't be here till after 8.
Okay, great. Well, she's the new Valley Rep for Mayor Garcetti. Kevin Taylor left, and he now works for the district director for, State Senator Henry Stern. I forgot. Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I recommend we move to number 11 since we
Yeah,
have people
we
here
have
to speak
people
on
sitting
it,
here
right?
waiting for 11, so let's, the treasurer's report, and we'll go back to them. Mr. Welsh?
But I'm not ready.
And
Okay. So this, I'm gonna wait till Mr. Niederberg is. Okay, well, because I need his help. So, because Mr. Niederberg chaired for me in my absence the last land use committee meeting, so I'm not entirely up to speed on it, so I'm gonna read the motion, and then maybe get some infill if you have any supplemental information to add for the
All I
board.
can say is that at this point, that as soon as we pass this, I assume we will basically, we have to give Jessica a copy to bring it back to the file copy to staple with the motion.
Right, and she has not left yet, right?
No.
Because we also will need to get from her, if she has it, as I understand, we need to get the council file number to reference,
That's right.
right? This particular motion is in relation to a property in what has been identified, and you who are here regarding this issue might also supplement what I need to say or correct me if I misspeak. What has been identified in the Survey LA review of various historic or significant resources within the city of Los Angeles, what is known or termed as a historic neighborhood, which is a group of 4 or 5 houses of the same era and the same designer, I believe, kind of centered on Agnes in Studio City. So this particular property has transferred ownership recently and is apparently in the process of being developed, a demolition permit is probably imminent in this particular
It's been applied for.
particular case. Been applied for.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so the motion is the Studio City Neighborhood Council supports Councilman Paul Krikorian's motion to confer historical cultural monument status for the property at 4221 Agnes, Studio City, California, and to be issued as a CIS. This statement would be issued as a CIS to the council file number, which is to be determined. And I guess that, and again, maybe Jessica can update us on this, but there was a meeting yesterday, or the council meeting yesterday, where Councilman Krikorian was to have brought this motion.
I have the motion if you want me to read it.
Well, let's wait, we'll get
I
to
also have
public.
pictures of the neighborhood.
Okay, we'll get to some public comments next, so you'll have the opportunity to present that.
I second it.
Yeah,
Do
okay.
you want to?
Yeah.
Heidi seconds.
As long as one of us.
Okay. All right, so I'll kick it back to you for the conduction of the public comment period. and so
We
forth.
have Mr. Sewers. Actually, we have 5 people. We'll start with Daryl.
Sure. I have pictures of the house.
Do I give them to you?
Yeah, you can.
We'll just pass them around.
Pass them around. I also have some research here about the nomination, some research about the history of the house. Here's the permit that they applied for, the
Thank you.
demolition permit.
Maybe you've seen this already?
No, I didn't see that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I have a petition that I'd like everyone to sign. And I can read the motion by our council member.
I'm gonna
Want me to
give
read
this
it?
back to you, I'm not sure if we are the
Can't do that?
appropriate, but I
Well, we're
don't
looking for your
know.
support
Well,
to
that's
save
what
our
we're-
neighborhood.
that's
These
what
3
we're
houses,
discussing.
there's 3 sister houses that were built in 1937.
Right now, we're just dealing with the one address today.
Pardon?
We're dealing with just the one address today.
Right. It's in a historic neighborhood, and it was, the owner probably lived in that house for about 60 years. His wife passed away, so he sold it. The new owner came in and said, oh, we want to preserve it. It reminds me of my grandmother's house. And then they applied for a demolition permit, which would completely ruin the neighborhood. Do you want me to read the motion from Paul Krikorian?
That would be great, yeah.
All right. The Zwiebel House, these were three brothers that started the Packard Bell Company, built these three houses in 1937. The Zwiebel House, located at 4221 Agnes Avenue in Studio City, has been identified in the citywide Historic Resources Survey, Survey LA, as a contributor to the Agnes Residential Historic District. It is significant as an excellent example of American colonial revival residential architecture, and as an early residential district associated with the entertainment industry in Studio City. Built in 1937, the property is a work of Arthur and Nina Zwiebel, self-taught husband and wife design team known for their innovation in courtyard apartment design in Southern California. The Zwiebel House is one of 3 houses in a row constructed for Arthur Zwiebel and his 2 siblings. The owners of the other home, I'm the owner of the 3rd home, and they're the neighbors of the, that's Peter Lamonic and Davina Lamonic, and they own the house right next to the house that's being proposed to be demolished. The Zwiebel House is one of 3 houses in a row constructed for Arthur Zwiebel and his 2 siblings. I therefore move that the council instruct the Planning Department Office of Historic Resources to begin the nomination process to designate the Zwiebel House as a historic cultural monument in the city of Los Angeles. I further move that the council instruct the Department of Building and Safety to put a hold on demolition permits requested for the Zwiebel House, with the city's Cultural Heritage Commission can review the nomination. Presented by Paul Krikorian, council member, 2nd District, and seconded by Ms. Martinez, I believe is the name.
If I might interrupt just for a moment, so, and that is the motion that
That's the motion.
That we are, in this land use committee motion that we are, we would be supporting.
And it's dated today.
Okay.
So, is there anything else?
No, thanks.
Davina, do you wish to speak?
Good evening, everyone. I don't have too much to add to what Daryl just told you. I know we've had the house since 1994. The neighborhood is so special, you turn the corner. I think most of you probably do know the neighborhood. We live in the middle house. The community is, they were all built off the street for a purpose of a country feel. There's so few neighborhoods that exist in the valley that I believe are like this, that it is really, really important that what I hope for is that everybody concerned chooses history over more construction. There's plenty of construction. There are plenty of places where people can rip things down and put up bigger houses. We've seen that. But this is not a tear down. The architecture of this house, the detail, all those houses. Nina actually, we believe Nina Zwiebel, who lived in our house, we really believe she designed each and every one of these houses specifically. For one's very country, Daryl's is more country like Connecticut. Ours became, it was early American, but she went to New Orleans in 1939 and bought ironwork to make it more iron and New Orleans style. There are capital A's in our ironwork. Now, why would people who want these homes, why would anybody want this feeling to be disturbed? This out of nowhere, Studio City, around the corner, ambulances and motorcycles. You turn the corner, that's why they film there. The trees go bare. All the trees are 110 years old, and they all go bare. And it is really, really a special place that I hope gets saved for the whole community, not just for us.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for listening to me. Thank you.
Peter, would you like to say something?
Sure. Thank you. I don't have much to add in terms of new material. I'd just like to qualify as a native Californian. My wife and I were both, we both grew up in Hollywood, never knew each other back then. We find out years later that we swam in the same public school, went to the same library, got candy at the same local grocery store, and our respective parents moved to the San Fernando Valley. Ours came in October of '53. We moved to Sherman Oaks. And we saw orange groves and horseback riding in the Northern Valley. We saw the 405 be developed. We've seen all those cottages on the west side of Radford removed, and we've seen the construction that's gone up there. I'm sure that people who drive here all the time see the development that's taken place, and our concern is that these magnificent examples of earlier architecture and history of California are going to disappear, all but disappear, and so many of them have, and there are so precious few left that we urge the council to consider the nomination for this particular house at 4221 Agnes Avenue as have historic preservation. I don't think I have much else to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Janet? Are you Janet? You okay?
I'm abstaining.
All right. Do we have John? Who's John Barton? You are? You want to speak on?
No.
I will.
Okay.
I'd like to save all the.
There's a list of people and I like John.
I'm tired of the mass construction.
All right. Yeah. Barry, do you have something to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo our land use chair, what he said, and that is, what you are voting on here is supporting the process to determine if this house should be designated, and be saved. You're not voting to tear it down, you're not voting to never tear it down. You're voting to support a process the process by which these folks will be able to speak, and the homeowner of the home will be able to speak, and it will be determined what happens. So I urge you to support this process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, as a native Californian also, I'm tired of seeing our history destroyed as quickly as possible by every money-grubbing carpetbagger that comes through. Especially people who go, oh yeah, we're gonna save the house, and then rip it to shreds. Yeah, I'm tired of the land raiders who do that as their specialty. I totally support this. It goes into a process, as Barry said, and it will be considered, the landowner will have his say. And if somebody would claim that he wanted to save it and then wants to tear it down because greed, I hope it does get designated and serve him right. We call that karma in certain circles. So by all means, all this board is doing is giving the neighbors and our entire neighborhood, cultural affairs, history, the whole 9 yards, which is what the board's supposed to be looking into, among other things, a chance to be preserved. And it'll be a legal, verifiable, fairly decent process, and there's no reason this board shouldn't allow it, shouldn't encourage it to go forward. Thank you.
The longtime resident, Al Baca, who sold the house, never would have sold it if this guy hadn't have told him that he wanted to save the house. Because Al called Davina afterwards and said,
So happy.
and was happy that he sold it to someone who was going to save the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. I think we need to vote on this.
Board comment.
Okay, comment.
Doesn't it require a second even?
Yes, it got a second by.
Okay. Missed that.
So I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So, my thought is, so somebody bought the house, and now after they bought it, they're being told they can't do something they intended to buy the house with. I'm a Studio City resident too, and so I'm just asking the question, because I represent everybody, is when the man sold the house, was it in some way contractual that he said?
It was
Permit-
not.
Let me just
No.
finish. I listen to you folks. Is it somehow contractual by the permit that if you will not, or did he just say, oh, I love your house, I'm gonna, in other words, a person has a right to buy the house and do with it what he wants if it doesn't have the designation beforehand. So it feels a little backwards that we're saying, okay, you spent this money to buy this house to build your dream house, and we don't even know what it would be like. It might fit in the neighborhood really nicely. But now you're saying, well, but you can't build. So it seems at face value a little unfair for the person who purchased the house just on that level. But if this is about a process where both sides get to, I mean, it doesn't feel fair to me that I bought a house and now you're saying I can't do something with it if it wasn't predetermined to be historical. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's my comment on it.
Next.
Mr. Sussman?
Yeah, so it seems to me that there's two halves to this story. One is the actual historic preservation and value as an architectural style, gem, or whatever. And from my point of view, as an architect, I don't see that superficially. It's a revival style. These people, as you stated, were known for their courtyard apartments. So it's not even that they're well known and known for this style. So revival is a very suspect style to preserve anyway. And we do have the LA Conservancy that have thoroughly gone through and documented and earmarked many of the valuable or historic designations. And it's not just for architectural, sometimes it's for the history that it goes through and who have lived there. The other thing is, it seems that there is a effort to make this a more of an architectural monument or cultural value to prevent the building of changing the neighborhood and the character and so forth. And those are separate things. And in terms of the neighborhood, we have just gone through extensive laws and regulations for the baseline mansionization, which designates or gives conditions on size, on setbacks, on height, on density, on articulation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, ad nauseam.
Property.
Hey, it's not your term.
Let us know when you start enforcing those.
And so I think it's up to cultural heritage, and I'm totally against this.
Mr. Niederberg.
I think it's a good idea to support the council person. I think it helps a lot, and it's only to do with the demolition permit. It's got nothing to do with any other permits going back later. Today, we're dealing with a demolition permit. I think they can wait. It can be deferred a little bit, basically, until it's totally vetted. Just the demolition permit we're talking about. We're supporting our council person.
Lisa, did you have something?
I just need some clarity. I'm not understanding. Is this a street that's of historical value?
Yes.
So it has been deemed as historical, so the homes are?
There are 5 houses in that, the 3 Zwiebel houses and 2 other houses across the street, which were built around the same time.
But they're registered as historical?
It's not registered.
They
We're
do,
trying.
they do not have historical preservation status, but they are in an historic
District.
district,
Yeah,
yes.
as
And they show up in a lot of articles that are published and available, and this is, it's not inconceivable that some of these people here have actually seen these articles in papers before.
And Councilmember Krikorian endorses you and your
He made the
efforts
nomination to say
to
that it's
stop the
cultural
demolition.
historic monument, yes.
Thank you for the clarity. Oh,
Might
yeah, go
I
ahead.
supplement that?
Yeah.
So the Survey LA has identified this neighborhood, this cluster of 5
Yes.
homes as,
historic.
it's to my way of thinking, it's a category below a historic monument, right? But there was the identification of this neighborhood as historically significant, as a historic, potential historic resource, I would say. This information has been available on ZEMIS, and so the fact that that neighborhood exists, I think, is self-evident in the neighborhood, and also would have been something that a potential buyer in a caveat emptor kind of due diligence would have been aware of.
Yeah.
All other issues, and Mr. Sussman brought up a number of very interesting points about how these things might be evaluated, but the fact that it's in this neighborhood is not a secret, and would not have been news to anybody who did their homework. Just to come back to your point about the baseline mansionization ordinance, we're still operating under the Studio City RFA, have not yet, because of the process of rescinding our RFA, we're still not under the BMO, but let's assume that that's coming.
What's Survey LA?
Can somebody help me with this, because I
The city
can't.
of Los Angeles.
They're an official
look-
city
yeah,
agency.
They look across Los Angeles for culturally historic neighborhoods. It's not the sharpest lens on it, but I'll just say
Yeah.
one thing about the street, because I know somebody who has a house that's not a National Historic Landmark, but it's a house designed by R.M. Schindler.
Right,
And it's
the
called the
Schindler House.
Pressburger House, and it's a very special house, and it's got some other status that's not a National Historic Landmark. But you don't need to be a genius to see that. I mean, the street, what they were talking about is true. It's the homes are back off of the road. It's a very special street. So, it's true that on the other side, you see the giant monsters that came up on Laurel Canyon. So, you can do what you like.
If that street is, as you say, then the setback will be preserved.
Yeah.
There's prevailing setback.
Andrew, yeah.
Okay.
All right, hold on.
Alright.
Can I have a quick comment? It's more, is there any plan already put forth by the guy after it's torn down, what they plan to put there?
We have not seen it.
We've not seen it, but he's going to eliminate the setback. He wants to move the house, build the house forward.
So he can build a pool.
Yeah, he wants to build a pool in the back, and,
If I may, there's no process by which this project on its own would go otherwise to the planning department, where it would come before the land use commission or committee, or the planning commission for discussion, unless this particular conversation, the motion sponsored by Mr. Concord, it would not otherwise require a review.
So it has some kind of designation.
So it's not, no, what he means it's not a change of zoning, it's still gonna be a single family.
There's no specific entitlement that would.
By right.
That's not entirely true.
Should we vote on this?
Well, I'm interested in your point of view.
If they want to change the required setback,
Setbacks, yes.
that is definitely a city planning issue, which will trigger a public hearing.
I'm assuming, and it's difficult to read between the lines, there's a lot of hearsay. I don't mean to diminish what it is that you're saying, but it's not concrete information that we're going on. But yes, if there was a deviation that was a specific request to the planning and zoning code, there would be some process potentially.
May I add something regarding that? Quickly. There is a prevailing setback on the street. In our area, they're all set way back, but a couple of houses away, it's like 10 or 15 feet off the street. So could they use that setback without getting a variance?
It's a very complicated procedure, but what they do is they have to measure the whole block,
Yes.
street to street. They throw out the exceptions, and they take the middle 40% or 60%, I forget which one, and they average that. So the homes that are really close or really far are eliminated, and they take an average. It's complicated. You can go on to lacity.org and have a prevailing and measure all the things, and they check that.
LADBS.org,
Yeah.
LADBS.
So you could sort of check it on that. You can go to Zemus and put in the address, and you can measure the whole block and see what you're dealing with. Zemus, Z-I-M-A-S.
Okay, shall we vote on this? I think we could probably do it the easy way. All those
Opposed besides
opposed? All those opposed, please raise your hand. Mr. Sussman. All right. All those in favor of this? Okay, that was hard. Thank you. Okay.
Could I ask Jessica if do you happen to know what the council file number is for this matter, for this motion that was introduced by Mr. Krikorian yesterday, I believe?
No, I can get that information for you.
Okay.
What do you have, you have what the motion was, it said, the number on it?
Got it.
It doesn't.
Okay, well, so
Dated
we'll,
January 17th.
I'd still like to have something for her to take back to the office.
Okay, we can get it to her, we don't have to have it right now.
I
Any number, we can get it on top of this.
any of that you can have. I appreciate it.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right, obviously, Tanaz is here.
Jessica, do you want to introduce her, or does she wish to introduce herself? She's. Okay, come on in.
Hello, I'm Tanaz Golshan, and I'm the new West Valley field rep for the mayor's office. So I'm very, very happy to be here. I recently started just a few weeks ago, so please bear with me. I don't have too much of an update from the mayor's office, but I'll definitely be back with updates along the way. But I used to work at the school board for school board president Steve Zimmer, and now I am, again, after that, I'm now here. Really happy to be here. Very accessible. Denise, you have my information. Always please feel free to email me, comment if there's anything that you need, and share the information with the rest of the board members. And I can say that at our staff meeting yesterday, the mayor's top priorities have been homelessness and getting rid of the tents, encampments, theft, and trash. So I don't know if you guys have been dealing with the trash and the recycla issues, but yeah. But that's really it for now. Again, I'm very accessible. Please feel free to reach out to me whenever you need, and that's it.
Welcome.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Do you have cards?
I do. I can pass around some of my cards, for sure.
So quick question.
And I'm sorry I'm late. I'm very sorry I'm late. Crazy day.
With the homeless encampment, is this, so are we looking at the streets, the river, and the freeway? Is it all one? So, or is it like separate departments handling certain areas?
I mean, there are different people working on different areas in the city, just all throughout Los Angeles, all under the,
I understand that,
under the
but
homeless department, but yeah, it's
But it's under,
yeah, everywhere. Yes, everywhere. I mean, it is gonna take a little while, and they're, definitely the rate at which the campus are growing is very high. But it's definitely something that.
but it's under,
Yeah.
the mayor's umbrella.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank
no
you.
problem.
Thank you very much.
Oh, wait, public
Good luck.
comment, we have public comment with Richard Adams.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for coming. Good luck.
I had one quick question, which was, why is the West Valley mayor's rep seeing us here in the East Valley?
I know the answer.
She does. I was just gonna say, Studio City is part of my area.
Only the city of LA would think it was West Valley.
Yeah.
I know, as well as Sherman Oaks.
Yeah, Sherman
Part of
Oaks
my
and
area as
Studio
well.
City got into the West Valley grouping.
All right, we moved. Thank you very much.
That's because of property values.
Yeah, is that right?
Okay, we're going to move back to the treasurer's report.
Treasurer's report.
I'm back.
Welcome back.
How was your
Hi.
trip?
My trip was successful, thank you. So, in front of you, you see the monthly expenditure, 2 reports, one for November and one for December. The stakeholders have access to this every day, live online, to keep and see how things are going. These are our normal transactions. We're not spending enough money. I'm just sounding the alarm, except for Sussman, who is happy with us not spending money. We have 5 months left before the end of the fiscal year, and so we need things to go through committee, come to the board, and funding within 5 months, or we lose the money, we don't get it back, and we're not allowed to spend money in June for movies in the park in July. So we're not gonna be able to do that. The city won't allow it. So maybe I encourage the budget committee to encourage bringing people again before the board to spend money. That's just a little sidebar.
I won't worry about it.
If you have receipts, by the way, if you have receipts for luminaria things, W-9s, contracts, I need all the stuff. I'm playing catch up for 3 months, okay? Please.
Does your ticket get paid?
Okay.
Comments?
Comments?
I have a comment. Is it possible to know a teeny bit more, I mean, I don't want to talk about it right now, but is it possible in the reporting, and I'm sure that this is a form, to know more than just credit card transaction?
Well, that's just how it was. Either I can have the city write a check, I can request.
No, I don't mind using the credit card, I think that's a great idea, but I'm just saying, You don't know what the.
Item was? You can look at the receipts online. Look at the receipt.
Hollywood XD.
Eric, look at the receipts online. They're all online.
The receipts online are.
You can look exactly and see what everything is.
Well, I'm sure it's there, okay.
You have to have a computer.
It has to be loaded online before these can be generated, so they're all online.
Gotcha. But where it says description, I feel it could say something other than credit card description. That's the programmatic? I mean,
That's the city program.
I know, okay, well, look, I'm a dumb guy, but Home Depot credit card transaction outreach is one set of criteria. There's also posters and boards for the signs. If we can't do that, I got it. If that's all in the receipts and the bells of the operation, I get that, but it would be good so that we would know, like, for example, what were we outreaching in November for a couple $100 here, you know, I mean, I just don't know, so.
The receipts are, you know, just so you know.
Mario, right.
I am, as I said, I'm behind 3 months, so.
Yeah.
Every receipt is labeled, what event, who spent the money. what
Right,
it's for.
Amazon 7420. Good stuff, I'm getting in, I approve it, but I just would like to know more, because I just don't think.
Okay.
Okay.
It's, the point is, it's public, you can look and see exactly, there's no question what it was spent on.
I could also see that it's a credit card transaction, like all of these, but I would like to just know, maybe they can't fix it, but that's what, it would be good if they could, because then you would know, a little description.
That's what the old MERs used to let me do. The old MERs, I could put exactly what it was.
Correct.
You can't do it.
Correct.
I'm just answering the question.
Yeah, and
3 months I haven't been able to say anything.
It's the city clerk.
You're an email.
Thank you.
All right, the Board of the Studios, the Board of the Studio City Neighborhood Council has reviewed the monthly expenditure reports for December. I have another one here for November, and we have one for November. And hereby accepts and approves. We have to do this by,
BAC, individual.
All right, let's go.
we have to do it individually. Okay, November. Andrew Sussman.
You approve it?
You approve?
Yes.
All right, Eric Previn.
Yes.
Heidi McKay.
Yeah.
Lisa Karajan.
Yes.
Patrice Berlin.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yeah.
Richard Welsh.
Yes.
Richard Niederberg.
Yes.
Robert Schiller.
Abstain.
I want to change my vote.
Okay, next victim. Give that to the gentleman over there. The Board of the Studio City Neighborhood Council has reviewed the monthly expenditure reports for December and hereby accepts and approves. Andrew Sussman.
Yes.
Eric Previn.
We're excited.
Yes.
Heidi McKay.
Yes.
Lisa Karajan.
Yes.
Patrice.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yep.
Richard Welsh.
Me? Yes, yes.
Richard Niederberg.
Yes.
Robert Schiller.
Yes.
And, okay. There that goes.
Cool.
Okay, next victim. We're
All right.
moving on to Patrick.
I don't really have a report. Everything that's written underneath there did not come from me, so don't read it, although I would like to second it. But yes, we do have money to spend. I'll write out emails to the normal things, Carpenter, Rio Vista, telling them we have money for them if they come and talk to us. We'll have a budget meeting sometime this month where we'll put in the Rob Schiller Memorial Return of the Totally Awesome Summer Kickoff and whatever else is on the budget. Where it was, yeah.
Where do we fill out the applications? Do you have them, or is it?
You can do it online, yeah.
Mr. Schiller, did you want to make the request?
I'll ask for reimbursement on it for next month.
Okay, all right.
I know it's gonna come up in committee
Yeah.
meetings, but I would like to grease the wheels now. And since I'm not known for spending money, Luminaria was a big success, and we would like to even expand that and have a little more money, so that's coming down.
Well, then the way,
in a few minutes, that's all.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying the way to do that, man, is to try to get any other, we can't, this year can't pay for that, obviously.
No.
Because, yeah, but so then try to bust out everything we need this year, like before.
It'll be for this year,
Yeah.
And if you have any other new ideas,
So are you saying we can't
like Eric, the writing
put money
contest.
aside for acts, but we can buy cookies?
Let's get it, we have the money.
Yeah. Actually,
It's gotta be spent by the end of this
we
fiscal
could
year.
theoretically
You get
pay,
$3,000 worth of
We can't
cookies.
go July.
yeah, or we could pay them right now for the agreement that they'll perform next December. this coming December.
Okay, let's go for the cookies.
Yeah, maybe cupcakes.
Your meeting for January hasn't been.
We don't have meetings until we have,
But now we do.
we haven't had anybody ask us.
I'm requesting one for the.
Yeah, as soon as we get one, we'll definitely have one this month, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
So
either
can
this month or
submit my
early.
application in?
Yeah, please do.
Okay. As soon as possible, so that.
Okay.
See, like that, if we need anything like that, if anyone thinks we need something like that, like a new generator, that should be done this
Right.
year.
So I have a proposal, because it does sound like you're onto the good area of reaching out to people to find out if they have needs.
Yes.
But could we be even more targeted, or make an announcement, or do something, like, or can we get Keith to do a little something, can we find a way to
e-blast?
get the word out?
Can we do an e-blast?
Yeah, an e-blast, exactly. Or just some clever way to say,
Yeah.
you know, guess what? Or are there people, I mean, you know, 'cause we're just 10 people.
Well, some stuff's gonna naturally be late. For example, we have performers at Luminari that have not been paid yet. They will be paid, and they're contacting me about this stuff, but we gotta turn the paperwork in. We gotta make sure it all
Where's
works.
the paperwork?
They did
Where's the paperwork?
Why is the paperwork on
Kidnapped.
Wait, hold on, this was supposed to be a quick one.
So it's gonna be a meeting.
Let's do some outreach.
We don't really have anything. Budget was supposed to last 30 seconds. It's still going on. Really, honestly, anything, but we can't talk about it unless it's on the agenda. So just like, send the ideas, we'll have a little meeting, we'll put everything, and then we'll bring it back here next month. Yeah, and we have a public comment.
Claire has a
Yes.
question for Mr. Sussman.
I think it's too late to do, I'm actually not sure who I'm supposed to ask this to, but I think it's too late to do something like the Green Fair or similar in that time frame if we have extra stuff.
Honestly, it's just gotta be put in the budget meeting.
Bring a proposal to the.
With a proposal.
Yeah.
All right,
Bring a proposal to the budget.
all right.
It has to have a
Sustainability.
budget and a, you know, it's gotta be,
Lisa,
it has to have a budget and what you wanna do when.
no more.
And we'll figure it
All right,
Yeah.
because that was like 5 minutes up the other.
out. Yeah.
Okay, I usually put in comments for items like this as a placeholder, just to see what comes up. Generator, great idea. Who's gonna store it at their house?
Rob Schiller.
Okay, but share the wealth. Rob's, we had it for over a year, Rob's gonna have it for a while. Getting another generator is a good idea, a larger one to run things like bouncies and whatever, awesome. But the weight has to be distributed so that, the island doesn't capsize.
Right.
Can
Okay.
I comment on this?
Another thing, I was gonna cover this, the bank, the idea of whether or not, if the guy from the city clerk's office at the bank meeting, no, you can't, well, so the big people need to contact the big people down there and find out with the little people whether or not it's really the deal. And Green Fair, Living Fair, there's an idea to make it, merge it into some other things. You were supposed to get a committee to work on the return of the roof, totally awesome. I'd like to be on that. I've been involved in an awful lot of events around here, and we've got some ideas, some other things we can do. Talked with a certain former president who now runs BID, and there's a chance for some synergy and some cooperation there. So there's a lot of good things we can do. That's why I sent that email out. We have time.
Yeah.
Let's not waste it. We've got the resources.
Let's hope someone.
Let's build on last year's successes and make it better. And there's things we can do to lose some of the excitement out of Luminaria. By excitement, I mean people going, where's my check? I thought I was getting a check tonight, things like that. Oh, your event's canceled. No, it's not. There are things behind that that need to be done. Jessica's not here, but with a certain level of, stepping up the pre-coordination, we can make our events go a lot better, get more bang for our buck, get the SCNC's name out there, and do more for our community. And we might also want to look at street banners, because I saw them taking some of them down on Ventura today. We already have the design, we don't need to go through that whole fiasco again. And maybe there'll be money for banners.
All right, that's it from budget.
Barry.
No, that's not it.
Oh, I don't have anything.
Yeah, no, transportation.
Oh,
yeah,
come on.
Anybody called it? That's a breakthrough.
Just before getting to the motions, I was just gonna mention, Jessica has been assisting in getting some about this tall. They're either white or orange, depending on where they're placed. They're circular, they attach to the ground, and if they're hit by a car, not too hard, they bounce back up upright. They've been installed at Laurel Canyon in Mulholland, where you may have witnessed people in the right turn lane trying to go straight when they should be turning right, and it's now forcing them to turn right, and they just can't sneak up and, you know, do that. We're trying to get them right out here on Radford, where you come up to Ventura Place and Ventura Boulevard. Theoretically, the right, very rightmost lane, you have to do a hard right onto Ventura Place. But I can't tell you how many times I'm in the second lane and somebody in the curb lane goes onto Ventura, which they practically would hit you. So we're trying for it there. And then also, you may have noticed cones at Ventura and Colfax, and also Chiquita and Colfax, where an earlier incarnation that the city did was these little round plastic poles which broke when they were hit. So we put some temporary cones over the broken off little stubs until we can get the ones that she put in like at Laurel Canyon. So just working on some traffic calming effects, and these are places where people cut across the double yellow line. On our motions, on motion C, we had about 10 people at our meeting last week from the neighborhood, and a couple of them tonight are out of town and others are sick. And as a result, I'm gonna ask to table it till next month, so the people that spoke at our meeting last week can be here. I think it's important for you to hear them, and they're not able to be here tonight. And then on motion A and B, they're roughly the same thing, just one to our senator and one to our assembly member. And what they are is, I don't know if you are all aware of this, but on our city streets, from time to time, they do a survey of how fast the traffic is going. And there is a state law that says if the speed limit is 35 miles an hour, but the survey shows they're all going 45, yet, to me, they're breaking the law. But the state law says the speed limit has to be increased. And I just think, in this day and age of encouraging more pedestrian traffic and bicycle traffic, why do we have this archaic state law that basically dictates to the local jurisdiction, being the city of LA in our case, that the speed limit has to be increased? Like on Riverside Drive, it was 35, it's 40 now. There are other places in the valley that were 35 that are now 45. There are places that were 40 that are 50. It's just, their formula with this state law will just keep it going up and up. So these two motions are just asking our two representatives in the state to please come forward with a proposed law that would stop this and let it go back to the local jurisdiction to set our speed limits. Because, I can't tell you how many emails I've gotten about people complaining about speed limits being increased, and all I can write back and say, this is a state law that's forcing it down our throats.
I'm hoping to start the board comments.
Huh?
I'm hoping this starts the comments.
Okay. Mr. Schiller.
Hi, Barry. So are we the first council to bring this motion forward? Are there other neighborhood councils that are also?
We may be the first.
Well, no, maybe
that's thought of doing this.
I think this is a great thing for us to spearhead and perhaps get some momentum with other
And I
councils.
think the council member's office would like support this too.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, we're talking about, we want to
keep the posted speed limit.
What's the fun of that?
We're talking about our two state representatives changing the current state law.
Isn't it
Let's
because
drive.
our population
So say
is
go.
growing and we gotta keep things moving?
We're hardly doing that.
But I know, no one's really moving
But
that
the
fast.
law is just,
Or much.
it's like saying, if you've got a street that's got a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit, and
Right.
everyone's going 45 when they do the survey, well, then let's up it.
Yeah.
Well, then when you get it to 45, then they start going 50, so 5 years later, when they do the next survey, it gets upped again. It's madness, it really is. And in terms of bicycling and pedestrians, it's just, we shouldn't be it's just like housing. We should not be dictated by the state law. We should have local say in what our speed limits are and how many units we build on a given lot. That's my take on it.
Did we move into architecture all of a sudden?
Yes.
Okay, just I thought maybe something.
Mr. Niederberg,
Just as an example, you know, housing and
I knew
speed
you would get
limits.
to it eventually.
Okay. You know, the speed surveys I've seen from the bench is, every 8 to 12 years, they do most of the changes. Doesn't do any really much good, basically, besides that, remember, the white signs you see on the streets, those are the recommended speed limits. On the freeway, the yellow ones are absolute, by law, you can't go faster than that. So what happens is you can still beat a current speed limit on a side street, even if you're going over the limit, if you're safe for conditions.
Can you drive a fire truck down those streets?
Drive a fire
truck almost anywhere.
As
long as we have a. Are we going in order or something?
Anyone over here? Richard?
I just want to say, Barry, you've touched on an interesting issue. My initial response to these motions would be, what is our purpose as a neighborhood council is to act as an advisory agency to the city of Los Angeles, right? So I mean, we've commented on things that the National Rail Transportation Board, right? We've brought a lot of, and I think we all need to be mindful of the time of our board and of our audience members. When you start talking about trying to recapture some local control, that begins to resonate with me. But I think we're walking kind of an interesting tightrope here. My question is, does this speed survey take into consideration in any regard safety records on the same street? If, in fact, for example, number of accidents that have happened on a stretch of
Not to my knowledge.
That's not factored in. Because if that was considered, then it might kind of counter-indicate, right, the increase of speed.
And there's no saying in either one of these motions if our two representatives are going to agree with us.
Sure, of course.
This is just a try at it.
Yeah, I understand, yeah.
Eric, did you have something?
A and B alone, not C, yeah. No, I haven't.
I mean, I know that maybe everyone here might agree with things. I just have a feeling that if the public as a whole knew that we were trying to slow down traffic, that seems like a confusing thing to want to do in 2018 Los Angeles.
We're not trying to slow it down.
Well, we're trying to prevent it from going faster.
Well, but it's going faster for a law that, I mean, Lancashire, let's say, it's been 35 miles an hour for like 50 years.
Yeah.
And now we have this law that could make it 40 or 45. It just doesn't seem right that the state is dictating to the city of Los
Let the
Angeles.
city decide, it's all.
The city should decide.
Well,
I
just want to say, it should be decided on something far more extensive than just a law that says, let's just take a survey, and if a lot of people are speeding, let's raise the speed limit.
And
It
that's
should
what
be
it is.
about safety. I mean, Riverside's this wide street, there's a few crosswalks, so if some poor person's starting to cross, and this guy's going 55, because that's the speed limit, and they get killed, you know, that's why this needs to be addressed. Because 55 down Riverside is not a good idea.
Well, is anyone talking about 55
It's
on
not.
that?
Yeah, well,
It's
it
not
could.
55,
Well,
but-
it won't be 55,
yeah,
but
yes.
if it's raised to 45, people always go over the speed limit. So they'll,
I think
All right,
part of the
so
problem
we
is
got public comment.
we have a difficulty here in
No.
LA, or even the state, enforcing laws, whether it's speeding or.
And this is really about local control,
Yeah.
and it's not about lowering this current speed limit.
Mr. Sussman.
We'll get, is it board or?
You
public
got,
comment?
We're still-
you and then we're on public
Check.
comment.
Okay, I mean, I just find this amazing. Month after month after month, you come here with so many motions to do a study. And now there's something that already has a study that's supposed to deem results, and you're against it. And I'd love to see this street where we can go 55. Everybody is saying, all our traffic jam, they're just saying, if the street is moving along, they're gonna re-study. And based on all your other motions and stuff, I am very suspect about what is being left out in terms of this full study. So, I mean, God bless those streets that are moving along. And, you know, this is something we need to know and to make improvements.
And should be done by the city of LA, not the state.
They're still counting the same cars and the speed, and they take the data. And, you know, and a couple months ago, you were saying, you're sitting here to promote walking and bicycles, and you were here supporting to get rid of the bike lane on some street.
I did think that was strange. All of a sudden, people
And it's just like, look, like a fish.
It included traffic, so everybody wants it gone.
Bike lanes are not for every street.
It's true. We're gonna go to public comment.
Yeah,
Mr.
riffing on the bike lane thing, if you're taking away a lane of traffic that carries cars on a routine basis, replace it with a bike lane that just stripes of paint on the ground with nobody actually using it, it's a waste. This traffic bill, if you allow the city of LA to decide what the traffic limits are, the speed limits are, and the public and reality is that they're driving, say, 45, 40 miles an hour, and the city of LA goes, well, we'll make it 25 so the pedestrians and the bike riders are safe. All you're doing is, we might as well call this the speed trap law. It'll allow the city of LA to change speed limits to anything they want, and get all those little Nazis on their motorcycles out there to write lots of tickets, and run up your insurance bills, and give more money to the state to waste on Jerry Brown's toy train. And I usually support Barry and everything, but this is a DUMB idea.
Okay, anyone else?
Victoria?
Well, I personally feel that it should be, that it's a local issue. And that the city should be determining what its own speed limit should be. On the other hand, if they're doing a survey, they never caught me, or the speed limit would be 60. Maybe I shouldn't have said that.
And that's on a
Well,
horse.
they're not writing tickets when they're surveying, it's just,
Okay, I think everybody's had a chance here. Shall we vote on
Can I have
this?
just one comment on C? On
Huh?
motion C?
No, we're not talking about C.
See you next month.
C's table.
Next month.
Yeah, but this is the transportation. Can I speak on the transportation for 1 minute
No,
like everybody else?
we're not,
No,
only,
we're just
because we're not
getting
talking
ready.
about C, it's not even,
Right, but the
We're
transportation
tabling
committee, I attended their meeting,
Yes.
and they asked me to talk to the council member, and I want to report back. I mean, why can't I give a 1 minute comment? I don't understand.
because
You
we're
all
not,
just asked
because we're not,
50 questions.
first, we're voting on
this was
me.
our November meeting,
Oh,
he
okay.
attended.
Yeah, but I was given instructions by one of your people to talk to the council member's office, and I did, so I wanted to report back. But why is that not a transportation issue that I can spend my 1 minute?
Well,
Because it'll come up, Eric, this will come up next month when we will actually vote on this, and that's the perfect time for you to address that issue. The people who are asking for C will be here that time, we'll actually be voting on it. It makes total sense for you to talk about it next month when we actually are voting on that motion, right?
It's not just about that motion, it's about information about preferential parking districts that the transportation committee asked me to talk to the council member's office about.
Yeah,
It's
but we're-
relevant.
Eric, we're not talking about preferential parking districts right now.
That's tabled tonight, gentlemen.
We're getting ready to vote on A, B, A, and B.
Let's go for it.
Okay, A goes to Adrin. The Board of the Studio City Neighborhood Council requests the Assembly Member Adrin Nazarian bring forth an assembly bill to allow all local government streets to remain at their original speed limit as each local government chooses. All those against, please raise your hand.
Again. Wait, what?
All those,
Wait, for the motion? So,
all
all those
those,
who do
yeah,
not
if you're
want the
against,
motion.
yeah, if
Okay.
you're against the motion, we'll do that. Okay, 1, 2, 3.
What?
Time
Don't
is-
you bully me.
Wait, hi, Patrice, is your hand up?
Yes.
I will not
Lisa,
be bullied.
the trees, and that
Never
was
cried you about
Eric.
that.
Okay, well, is your hand up?
Yeah.
Alright,
Lisa's hand.
Niederberg,
She got me already.
I already got you, I've got
She
Sussman,
notated it.
Oh, you're.
Eric, Karajian, Berlin, and Niederberg. So that's everybody who voted no? Or did I
And
miss
me.
somebody? You voted no? Patrick.
Oh, yeah.
I missed Patrick. Where's, well, I didn't do this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Motion will not carry.
Vote on B?
Yes, okay. Everybody who is against sending this to Robert Hertzberg, our state senator.
Is it all the same as last time?
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Okay, it's the same exact thing.
Wouldn't
One
that
is
be
going
weird?
to state, one is going to the assembly, and one is senator.
Just a screw up.
All right. Are you two still against,
Yeah.
okay, awesome. All right, thank you very much.
What does it mean?
It does not carry.
So it's not gonna be a motion.
Uh,
See, you need that vote.
Yeah.
So, don't bully.
All right, girls.
I thought we did know. I remember that.
Okay, girls,
Still
that's enough.
lobbying.
Yeah, yes.
Lobbying, not voting.
Jeez.
Okay, outreach and public safety are in here, so let's just skip those, right?
Yeah, we can do that. Okay, outreach is not here, public safety is not here. We have a bank report from Mr. Adams.
Yes.
It was a long but for Vank, productive meeting, very interesting. And for the public safety comment, I'm not gonna make. It looks like the neighborhood drug dealer across the street from me moved out in a big hurry last night, so somebody else's problem this week. Let me see, Vank. A lot of this is stuff that's gonna go to the appropriate committees via email. I'm busy doing other things this week, being lazy, so I didn't get them out. Funding from the city clerk, as I said, yes, you can, no, you can't spend forward, because he said, oh, you've never done that, and I pointed out that we used to, and then we were told, and then last year we did again. So, the big people need to talk to somebody in charge and get the definitive what's going on. They have some new workshops, the fires and everything up in the Tahunga area and stuff, they now have emergency funding for neighborhood councils, how to deal with that. Also, event liability might be something we want to look into. There's some new training videos. They're not required. There's a new video to come. And something to do with CBS funding for the CBS event next month. The money, anyway, the city clerk will take care of it. Funding freeze, we dealt with that. Oh, by the way, the new board return certificate is the MER with a new name. The city clerk had to change something because it's now theirs, but it's basically the same thing. Funding for the bank mixer. They have the event in November and one in February 23rd. It's their 15th anniversary. They'd like $500, but if we kicked in money before, they'll be happy with $250. I'm telling you what they said. It was a one-size-fits-all report, so I'm trying to get through the report. Okay, bonk. They said this is something for my committee, to check the bylaws online, because occasionally the city just comes through and changes stuff for you and doesn't bother telling you. Let me see, there's this is another council file number. We'll have to look into that. They did a big survey of public services, scan the documents and send them to you. They have a nice little graphic of your average LA City street and all the different agencies that have something to say on it that are involved in it. They're trying to figure out what to do with that. They allegedly did a survey. According to them, the CD2 top 3 priorities for city or for residents and businesses were street repair, street lights, and street sweeping, which I find interesting given the state of our streets. My neighborhood doesn't even have lights, and the only time I ever see a street sweeper is on the day before trash day. So they go around all our trash cans, and they're not even there every month. There is a LA 311 online for those of us that don't have smartphones or don't want to use them for things like that. You can just access it via your home computer or the one in the neighborhood council office. This report is like 400 pages, but there's a council file you get the report from. And everything goes to the Public Works Committee, and they're gonna deal with things on a triage level, tier 1 problems, then tier 2, tier 3. It all make a lot more sense when and if you go look at the report, or I send the thing to you. There was a group, what I call the Carrie Nation crowd. They were having a hissy fit about attaching liquor controls to CUPs and CUBs. I have the council file on that. Bless her heart, Jane? Jill. There was like 10 or 12 of them. They're basically cookie cutter, the same rather pinch strident, lecturing the world about things. And after about the second person, she goes, you go, no, wrap it up. They had a file about this thick. Lenny, bless his heart, pointed out that the reason we don't have liquor rules in our CUPs and CUPs is because the city has a writ of mandate against it from the 90s. A case up in Pacoima, if anybody's interested, I can send you the Supreme Court, or not Supreme Court, the Superior Court of LA file on that. You can look into it yourself. That's pretty much it. They were going to talk about elections, but they didn't have anything to talk about elections because, as usual, they still don't have any idea what they're going to do. At least the person there didn't. Much whining and complaining about trash contracts. It was a specific agenda item there. One of the good things is if enough people, anybody has a problem where you hear from any of your constituents that they're, oh my God, trash, enough people complain to 311 about their particular carrier, they can lose their contract. And Kevin James is involved with it, so maybe something will come of that. We shall see. Yeah, it's amazing. Once they gave out a franchise, a monopoly, everybody's prices went up and the service went down. There's council files having to deal with billing and outreach problems and with failure problems. I will share that with everybody via email, and it goes through the Energy Committee. Why, I don't know. Somebody mentioned SB 827, probably GAC and land use, will allow the increase of density within a half mile of transit corridors. This would be a state may even override square footage in certain cases. And you'll love this. There is a group called YIMBY, Y-I-M-B, which stands for Yes in My Backyard, that think this is a great idea. Nobody seems to know who they are. If somebody's really good with their Google foo, you probably would be a local hero if you figure that out. And I'd like to point out that I believe Laurel Canyon and Coldwater Canyon are transit corridors, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
They're both about a mile apart. So if we go a half mile in from one and a half mile in from the other, you can increase density across the whole thing. That'll be great. Yeah, I'll send you the files and stuff on, or send me an email and remind myself. Somebody's DEIR, but it's not out yet, but they said to support it. Some more council files that are mostly either GAC or whatever, and I have them in an email, so I just need to remember to forward them to you. Other than that, and one thing that I did see that bothered me that I want to bring to your board's attention because it goes directly to board autonomy and what happens at these meetings. They were talking about having a bank motion on the liquor thing. Now, my understanding of things as the bank rep, or even the alternate bank rep, is neither myself nor Richard would be empowered to vote on behalf of the neighborhood council on one of these motions unless and until the motion had come back to the board, been agendized, and the board voted and said, this is how we want that vote to go. And then whoever the rep is takes it back to bank and says, here's our vote as ordered by the board. And fortunately, they tabled the agenda, the idea of voting. I did vote to table. I felt that was in my authority because it went back to doing what I thought we should do, which is I'm not authorized to weigh in on this. If they'd actually gone for a vote, I would, of course, abstain for all the obvious reasons. But it might behoove this board to some sort of formal communication to bank saying that unless the board wants to authorize the rep to just vote whatever they think is appropriate, that to inform the bank hierarchy, whatever it is, that at least as far as Studio City is concerned, our representative at the meeting, whether they're a board member or not, is not authorized to vote to pass any motion or oppose any motion. Just because only the president is empowered to speak for the board, and taking an official stand on behalf of this board at a meeting where this board has not weighed in on the whatever it is you're voting on, seems to be being an anathema of what it is what we're supposed to do. So, like I said, it bothered me. I can put that in writing, but
I concur.
May I ask a quick question?
Sure.
about that? So when bank makes a motion, what weight does that carry?
I have no idea. And it's one of the
It's nothing, right? I mean,
yeah,
it's-
one of the senior people there, and I had a talk after the meeting offline. She thanked me for being there, said I was entertaining, surprise, and agreed with me that banks should only weigh in on things having to do with neighborhood council alliances.
Yeah.
If something's going on, like Bonk is trying to regulate neighborhood council alliances, I can see Vank or any of the other neighborhood council alliances weighing in on that because it directly affects them. But the idea of Vank weighing in at some level between the neighborhood council and the gods at Bonk,
We don't need them creating another level of a oligarchy.
like I said, the only thing, but it first bothered me that A, I thought it was a dumb idea, and B, I knew I had no authority to speak. And I just wanted to mention that because one of these days you may have somebody there who gets a wild hair and goes ahead and speaks for you all, and the next thing you know, you're going Whiskey Tango Foxtrot interrogative, how did we get in this mess? So, you know, I figure my job to go there as your representative is to bring back as much coherent information as possible, and if I see things like that that are a problem, to bring them to you, because that's what you get the big bucks for.
Thank you for your report. While you're there,
Yes.
bylaws?
Yeah, bylaws.
Do you have a quick-
Bylaws.
quick-
We will be having a meeting this month. We will be bringing you some stuff. I will be turning in the stuff we voted on, you all passed last year that didn't get submitted in time because we still have time to resubmit it. And other than that, going to a long-standing discussion here. People want to talk about governance. Board comments during the bylaws committee section right here is the perfect time for board members to bring whatever discussion of governance they want. There's also mechanisms in the bylaws for board members to either A, send things to my committee to be discussed, which they will be discussed honestly and fairly. B, you can submit bylaws changes directly to the board. It's all right there, black and white. All you have to do is read and follow the instructions. And also, if you want to talk about governance and you didn't have enough time or didn't bring it in here, at the end of the meeting, where you have board member comments and other items that are within your purview but not on the agenda, you have that every meeting and you can bring up the subject to your heart's desire. You have lots of options, but you need to be an adult and exercise them. Any questions?
No.
No. Thank you.
Okay, Rita's not here. Richard Niederberg, Cultural Affairs.
Thank you.
Well, there's been no meetings, no board meetings since Luminaria, so I have to thank everybody for helping on the Luminaria. There's still some entertainers that have to be paid, but we'll deal with that already. I gotta be reimbursed. But the best thing is that nobody got a parking ticket. The system using the little bookmark, for lack of a better word, worked. And so if we do it again, we'll do it again because it worked this time. We had no lights going out, no breakers, or GFIs popped. Very happy about that. Yeah, the Luminaria was successful. Looking to the future, we have a seminar at the library coming up, given by Mary Mallory, often does stuff there. And then also we are now testing the waters to have another film series there, a little happier, springer type stuff. That's not gonna happen until at least March or April. And that's basically for cultural affairs.
Cool. Also, I'd like to add, I mean, I think.
I have my hand up.
I didn't see it.
Okay, girls, cut it.
Were you voting?
Why did you pay them?
I didn't have the cash in my pocket.
But you were acting treasurer for 3 months.
I did not exactly accept that position,
Okay.
but I want to make sure you know, the way it was, we had a nice bureaucratic way of doing it. The people that booked the people gave the paper to Andrew, we supposed to give the stuff to you. Instead, it went to
Okay.
Instead, I gave.
I'm sure you guys can figure it out.
But you keep mentioning they haven't been paid. I haven't gotten anything.
Okay, Andrew, did you
So it makes it feel like I'm not paying people.
We're not on public comments yet.
Nobody's blaming us.
Okay,
Rob,
come
You
on.
gotta give me something to pay.
Take it
Rob,
outside.
I'll buy the first
I'm
one.
gonna read for me.
If I may make a
Well,
comment.
hold on.
Hey.
Andrew is waiting to say something. We'll go right down the line.
I think
Do you have
Luminaria
to?
was more than a success. I think the sheer numbers was almost triple of any year in the past. And I think it was, you know, a lot due to outreach, you know, and the public, you know, which was a lot done by Keith. And it's also a new world. But given that, I really think that those numbers can easily be sustained, if not increased. And given that, I think, you know, we should have more money allocated and actually kind of have a direction of what we would like, you know, the board to gain or provide for that. So we certainly welcome input from the whole board to the committee or at any other type, because we will be coming to you guys for money,
Yep.
more money.
Lisa?
Better organization would be.
Yeah, less time in between it.
Yes.
Okay.
Several meetings prior to, leading up to the Luminaria,
Yeah.
where people are sitting in a room and assigned tasks
We do that.
for better
We also know where you
organization. Well,
live.
I'm sorry.
We know where you live.
Better organization would be key.
All right. Anyone over there? Anything?
Claire? I definitely think we should do something about the bags and the lights and the small children that like to kick over the bags and the lights, because the entire time that, well, the latter half of Luminaria, I was running around picking up bags because
That's
they
your
were-
job description.
Yeah.
I know, but.
I mean, honestly, the alternative to that is say don't bring your kids, and that means no one will
Well,
come.
I'm
Very
thinking
sweet to
like,
do it.
like the things, the belt
Maybe we
things.
eliminate the lights in the bags, that'll take care of it, right?
No, we have new ideas for the lights in the bags.
Amazing.
It was discussed. You know, from my experience of Luminaria, when you look at pictures of New Mexico, the bags are spaced, and it gives a rhythm.
Yes.
And I think if we get new
Yes.
lights with more power that are spaced,
Yes.
they'll be self-spacing, and we can get better bags, maybe eliminate the baggies of sand and stuff like that.
Get
So
around for the committee meeting.
less might be more.
But
Cool.
we own the sand, Andrew, we own that sand.
We need to advertise that sand.
We own that sand, we need to spread it out.
It's in our storage unit. We own sand.
Maybe we can pave something.
We have crates
So we
of
say
sand.
go pound sand, we actually do.
For our next event, we'll have a
And we've carried
sandbox.
it so many times.
Harvard West, they do, they're very
Any
effective.
more
Yes.
board comments?
Board comments,
There
so,
is board comments?
no,
General?
in general. Let's go down. Eric, do you have anything to add? This is your time to say anything. We're on number 18. Comments from members on subject matter within the board's jurisdiction.
Sure.
We,
Yeah, I do.
Oh, we have Richard
time
who
out.
wants to say
That's why I said.
I served for 10 minutes, what do you mean?
We can solve Claire's problem by making the urban area a child-free zone. In all seriousness, this is one of, I think, maybe 2 organizations I've ever been involved with. And I've been involved with this one much longer together.
Are you counting the Army?
No, the California National Guard is like the world's largest military reenactment organization, because when I was in, our gear was 2 or 3 generations old, but that's another story, you'd have to buy beer to hear it.
Almost.
What I was trying to get to was, and I've proposed this back when I was just a lowly stakeholder member, and the board had all been the board for decades, if not longer. This is the only organization that does not have a formal after-action report, as we call it in the Army, a post-event review.
Went through this already.
You know, you sit down, and when people come, first off, when you have an event, you reach the good idea cutoff point. No matter how good the idea, you write it down for next year. You don't try to do things at the last minute. Second of all, you collect all those good ideas, and people who've been involved, you have short interviews afterwards, you get everybody together, relaxed meeting, take notes. What went right? What went wrong? What could be done better next year? Hey, I had this idea, why don't we do this? And that's when the good idea fairy is once again welcome in the process. The good news is, as I'll be happy to sit down with anybody else that has experience in doing events, and write this up, and we can put it in the operating procedures, so we don't have to have the geniuses downtown fiddle farting around with it for 6 months to a year and then tell us we have to rewrite it some other way. But I really think it would behoove this organization to have a notebook and a folder in the new computer that we've got fixed up. Each committee should have its, each event should have its own little folder. 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, and have a formal meeting after the event and codify all the things that happen, the good, the bad, the ugly, and next year's brilliant ideas, so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Nobody here is irreplaceable. We can all get plane could fall in the sky from Burbank right now, and I'd walk out and go, damn, I miss him. But that's my suggestion. I'll be happy to do my part. And while we're on the subject, I'd happy to participate in any of these committees and stuff to set things up, because I've got a lot of that after action back in here. And there's lots of things to be done, and I have some fair amount of free time.
Thank you.
Claire had a question?
No.
No.
You want to know when I was going to be done?
We're gonna move on to 18 now, right?
Patrice,
I just, FYI, when we were talking about who should store the generators, whatever, I contacted Den, and Den told me that city property cannot be stored anywhere other than in our storage, et cetera. Cannot be stored at,
So what do you want us to do?
not me.
Do you want me to turn it into done?
No, I'm just telling you that
Oh,
that's
is it
what
yours?
what I was told, is city property cannot be
We can talk
It's-
to.
I
I'm
don't know,
gonna
maybe it's
charge,
liability.
how about if I
Maybe it's not.
charge the board 50 cents a month for storage?
There you go.
Yeah.
There you
Just
go.
saying.
50 cents a month. That works.
Or a penny a month.
Seriously, because I can't store it here.
Propose it for the
I know,
budget.
I know.
Well,
Absolutely.
they would have,
Oh, yeah.
they said they would have to find somewhere to store it. I'm quite sure they have generators somewhere.
Yeah, I know.
But,
Let's move
yeah.
on to 18.
That's a fire hazard.
Yeah, I understand. But I think just charging somebody a penny a month is a good idea. All right, we're on 18.
You didn't say a penny.
Whatever.
I did say 50 cents.
Yeah, I heard that, I know.
Okay.
You just
Oh,
cut down really 500%.
18?
Well, we knew you were gonna
You have a
do that
comment?
anyway.
Okay, comment.
Well, hold on, let's go around. We're on 18 now. Comments from board members on subject.
Okay, I'm Eric Previn, I'm the employee contractor rep on the board, and I think that we should earmark some money, having spoken to the council district office, to do some outreach about the upcoming, they're not at the council yet, but we have approved in this hall several preferential parking districts, and all the little chipmunks are getting their signatures now, which is nice, but the people who work and will be impacted have no knowledge about it, and we've done no outreach about it. So I think it would be good to have a statement from the council member about what the overall strategy is by pulling or making private like 1,000 spaces along our neighborhoods. And I think we should notify the people who will be impacted. So I realize we already voted on it, and you can say it's out of our hands, but it's not out of our hands. Our job is to let the people who live in our midst, that includes not just the residents who will benefit from private parking on the public roadway, but also the people who are used to parking on the public roadway. We can come up with some solutions that accommodate all, but at the moment, we've just notified one side, and that's insufficient in my view.
Heidi?
No.
Teresa?
No, thank you.
Now's your time.
Please tell me if this is like something I should ask in an email or not now, or I'm just really confused.
Go for it.
So it's been mentioned that at some point, maybe bylaws could change so I could vote, not just on money things.
That's true.
Is-
It's been taken to bylaws. We haven't gone there. It
What,
hasn't.
letting the youth member vote on anything other than funds?
Yeah.
I think that would pass my committee with absolutely no problems. Question you have to ask is for the rest of the board members.
Okay.
It's been asked previously. So go back to it. Okay.
I would just like to say, I'd like to use my 2 minutes to say, Eric, I agree with you 100% on that. And, if anyone else is interested in actually helping out all the residents of Studio City, then I think we could all get together and probably help that out and see if there's not a compromise that we can find between people who are just trying to work and people who don't want cars parked in front of their houses or whatever that is. Shirley?
This will be the first time I have nothing to say.
And yeah, you picked up the microphone.
Lisa?
Richard has had his hand up here,
I know.
I'll take that.
Okay.
This is
First
in
thing
it.
is I concur with our youth members thing, let her vote everything is not money, and that's what the statute says, and written. The other thing also is that supporting with what Barry and everybody else has been saying, you know, now they've opened up the Wild Acre Park again, Wild Acre Park again, you know. Yes, you still have that piece of private and clear. Now they're sitting on Oakdale, both sides of the street. You try going down Laurel and turning onto Oakdale, and you've got cars both sides of the street going all the way up the street. So, they just moved the cars by having the preferential parking thing. And it was really unsafe walking that way.
All right.
All right. I have no closing comments other than thank you all for staying and participating in this lovely extravaganza. Do we have a motion? to adjourn?
Yeah,
Motion to adjourn.
I second your motion.
Third.
Third.
Fourth, third.
Meeting is now adjourned.